Good afternoon, colleagues and distinguished guests. I would like to welcome all members, participants, as well as guest speakers to this fourth meeting of the Delegation for Relations with Afghanistan. And this session will be dedicated to an exchange of views with representatives of the Afghan democratic opposition. Interested members should know that following the requests received, interpretation is provided in English and Spanish. And if there are no remarks, I see the colleagues are not here yet, then the draft agenda can be adopted. So we will adopt the draft agenda. I would also like to give a warm welcome to the guests who are joining us online today for the live streaming of this meeting. Also welcome. The point 2 on the agenda for today is the approval of the meeting of the meetings of the meeting singular of the 17th of November 2025. So if there are no comments, the minutes are considered adopted. We don't have any announcements from the chair for today, so we will move on to the exchange of views with our esteemed and distinguished guests. I would like to introduce Mrs. Fawzia Koofi. She's the President of Women for Afghanistan. Welcome in the European Parliament. Also, Mrs. Aliye Yilmaz, Assistant Professor at Süleyman Demirel University in Turkey. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Kanan Danish, a Development Practitioner and Journalist for Afghanistan International TV. Mrs. Danish. I am so sorry. Mrs. Danish. And Mr. Zalmai Nishat, Founder and Executive Chair of Mosaic Global Foundation. And, well, as I said, let me start today by welcoming our guests, both of our speakers, but also the broader coalition of Afghani opposition. A warm welcome to the European Parliament. This is also your house, and I appreciate that you have taken the effort to travel to Belgium and visit this Parliament. We look forward to hearing your views on the continually worsening situation in Afghanistan. Just to recall that on the 27th of February, two weeks ago, Afghanistan and Pakistan became involved in a serious military escalation that Pakistani authorities has described as approaching open war. And while Kabul has condemned the incident as a violation of its sovereignty, Pakistan continues to accuse Afghanistan of harboring terrorist and separatist groups threatening its internal security. Reports indicate that the escalation has already displaced around 68,000 children, further aggravating the humanitarian situation. At the same time, the wider regional context remains extremely fragile, and rising tensions involving the United States, Israel and Iran risk generating further instability and possible spillover effects across the region. And in this context, Afghan refugees in Iran face what the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees has described as an impossible choice. These developments come on top of an already severely strained situation in Afghanistan, where recurrent natural disasters, disruptions to international assistance, including programs funded by the United States Agency for International Development, also known as USAID, and large-scale deportation of Afghan refugees from neighbouring countries continue to deepen humanitarian needs. The cumulative impact of this crisis has exposed the extreme fragility of Afghanistan's social fabric, infrastructure and humanitarian access, while food insecurity and malnutrition are rising sharply. And furthermore, as all of our guests know, the Taliban regime continues with its policy of gender apartheid, continuing the total exclusion of women from public life. Peril faced by women in Afghanistan has increased over the last weeks as the Taliban legalized domestic violence in their penal code. This means that even if women adhere to the very strict and limiting laws imposed on them by the Taliban, they still cannot escape violence, as violence against women in their own homes is now legalized. In October 2025, the European Parliament adopted a resolution condemning the Taliban's policies, particularly the gender apartheid regime. The resolution called for urgent humanitarian assistance for the protection of women's and girls' rights, including access to education and participation in public life, and reaffirmed the importance of respecting the principle of non-refoulement for Afghan refugees. In this context, it is essential that Afghanistan remains high on the international agenda. The international community faces a difficult but necessary balance: how to support the Afghan population, particularly women and girls, through humanitarian assistance and meaningful engagement, while avoiding steps that could legitimize the Taliban. And furthermore, it remains of importance to demand accountability and justice for human rights violations. I wanted to have those introductory remarks to place what we're going to discuss today in the right context, especially in the light of recent developments. But given that we have our guests here and we're here to listen to you, I would like to pass on the floor to the guests. And we will do this for 10 minutes per intervention in the following order, as I introduce Mrs. Koufi, Mrs. Yilmaz, Mrs. Danish, and Mr. Nishat. And then we will give the floor to the present members and otherwise have a discussion among ourselves also, because we know that people are watching, and we also know that the proceedings of the delegation are followed very closely with a lot of attention from different groups in and around the Afghan diaspora. So I think it's very good that we're having this discussion here today. Thank you so much. Mrs. Koufi, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madame Garcia Hermida. Yes, indeed, it's a very timely discussion, and I would like to thank you as the chairperson of the Friendship Group with Afghanistan, the organizers of this timely event, my fellow compatriots for making the time to come and raise their voice, share their experience today. With European Parliament, which is the house of millions of people who live in this continent. Just 3 days from now, 21st March, will mark will mark the beginning of schools in Afghanistan. The education year begins. This year is going to be the 5th consecutive year that girls in Afghanistan beyond grade 6 are not allowed to go to a school. Many girls, when we talk with them, they describe the situation that they are living as life in death in slow motion. So we are here to speak about the dreams, the aspirations, the concerns, the frustration of 18 million plus women, but all population in Afghanistan who experience death in slow motion, basically in Afghanistan. Madam Chairperson, the Taliban were brought to power 5 years ago under the pretext, under two pretexts. First was the Taliban will fight other violent extremism groups under the slogan of counterterrorism. And also the second pretext was that the Taliban have changed, the Taliban 2.0 are more moderate. And in fact, I engaged with them, I negotiated directly with them. I was one of the 4 women who was sitting in the table to talk with them about the fate of my country and my people under the same pretext of Taliban 2.0, and the Taliban have changed. But 5 years later, Afghanistan is not safe when it comes to violent extremism groups, based on credible reports from the United Nations, but also based on our observation and contacts with people around Afghanistan. Afghanistan once again have become the safe haven for violent extremism groups. We all remember that in July 2022, the leader of Al-Qaeda was killed by US forces just 2 kilometers away from the palace, the center of power in Afghanistan, followed by recent regional incidents. This, together with already deteriorated situation of human rights and humanitarian crisis, add to the suffering of people in Afghanistan. 5 years after the Taliban takeover, they have issued 262 edicts and decrees limiting the people's liberty and freedom, including women. 130 plus edicts only address the limitation, only are issued to limit women's rights and to suppress them. Afghanistan is the only country in the whole globe that women are deprived from their fundamental basic rights, the rights to work, education, existence. And as you rightly pointed out, recently on the 4th of January, they have basically legalized what they have been practicing by issuing this penal code. They have divided the society into categories, formalizing slavery, limiting women access to justice or any form of, legal protection mechanism. On the other hand, Afghanistan is suffering from economic crisis because of the fact that women are not in the job market. Based on credible UN reports and the World Bank reports, Afghanistan have a $5 billion deficit to our economy because of the fact that women, as the main driving factor of economy, are not part of the job market. They pushed women to become invisible. They erased them from the public life. They make them feel that they are not part of the society. They have literally launched a war against women and against anybody who feel otherwise or speak otherwise than the Taliban. For Taliban, it's a government of the Taliban, by Taliban, for Taliban. And if you do not believe in the same context, you do not have the right to exist or live in that country. That makes Afghanistan not a safe partner for the world, and definitely not a safe country for its citizens. We must change this situation, because the only thing that is clear and certain is the change. Change is inevitable in Afghanistan. We must prepare ourselves. And that's why, today's engagement is very important, because we need to prepare ourselves for a situation where, where Afghanistan will face even further deteriorating crisis in terms of security, and the forces who believe in a democratic Afghanistan, an Afghanistan that is based on the principles of Islam, the true Islam, not the Taliban Islam, work with its people and work with the rest of the world. We need to prepare ourselves for that. It's important that European Parliament, the European Union, the European institutions, as a continent that millions of people look towards and look up, as a continent that is still there to protect multilateralism, that is hold the perpetrators of human rights violation into account, that hold dictators into account, has a responsibility to pressurize Taliban. Instead of emboldening the Taliban, you need to pressurize and make them accountable for what they have said during negotiation. And I quote, they have said during negotiation that from their perspective, women can be ministers, women can be PhD holders, women can work. They were making all these fancy statements and rosy statements to make the world believe in them, that they have become Taliban 2.0. But the moment they went to Afghanistan, they launched their, as I said before, their war against women. So the world must hold them accountable. When there are diplomatic missions to Afghanistan, they need to put women and human rights as a first issue, and constitutional order, a government that people have a say and a voice like any other nation, should be the first in the agenda when the diplomats engage with the Taliban. But what I hear, on the contrary, the diplomats, that when they meet them, express their delight and pleasure through their social media posts and appearance in meeting with the Taliban. I wonder how many of these diplomats would actually be delighted to meet women or Afghan women or Afghan men who are not the Taliban ideology. Therefore, it's important to not embolden the Taliban. If you are not supporting the population in Afghanistan, at least not embolden the Taliban, because we, the people of Afghanistan, know that the future holds. The future is going to be ours. We are determined that we will change the situation, no matter who stands with us or who doesn't stand with us. This is our commitment, because it's our country. It's not a diplomatic mission for us. It's our country, and we are determined to change the fate of our people and make Afghanistan a country that stands in peace with the rest of the world. In that context, we have started many initiatives, including, some dialogue processes where we bring Afghans together to talk about what is best for their country in a very genuine and organic discussion. These discussions are not easy, but we need to hold them. We need to give the space for Afghans to talk about their country. And this is the least we expect from European Union. Give the space to us to talk about what we think is best for us. Somebody mentioned in the morning, we want the same level of support that the Taliban received when they were fighting your soldiers. When your soldiers were investing blood and treasure in Afghanistan, the Taliban were fighting them, but the Taliban received office space in Qatar. They received financial support. They received technical advisory support. We are not receiving 0.something% of that support. We believe that with dialogue, working with each other, crafting an organic narrative, we can change the situation in Afghanistan. In the meantime, we also need to use the accountability mechanisms as a leverage to pressurize the Taliban. Mechanisms like the investigative mechanism that I would like to thank here the EU for sponsoring it in the Human Rights Council. Mechanisms like, Afghanistan case before ICJ that Netherlands, the country that you represent, was one of the sponsors, 1.5 years ago. This case was initiated, still no progress. The case with ICC, codification of gender apartheid, because what is happening to women in Afghanistan is a clear indication of gender apartheid, and no other country actually witnessed what we witness in Afghanistan. And they say, people who are burning will understand the impact of the consequence of the flame. We are burning. We are burning because of the fact that we are being erased. And Afghanistan in 5 years might become another, everybody might be trained as the Taliban, because they're creating madrasas one after the other, and these madrasas do not even support the actual curricula of Islam. They support curricula that the Taliban embrace. So in conclusion, I would like to once again thank you for the support and solidarity. Your support as the voice of your people is important to amplify our voice at this critical time where I'm sure now thousands of people in Afghanistan watch, especially women, to see what comes out of this meeting. So don't think that these meetings in Europe will not have an impact. It will empower the people. It will create a rainbow of hope, and it will empower the spirit of resistance among my people, among the women. So please continue this, but not only this. Support, give space, give the same level of support you have been supporting to the Taliban, because we are frustrated, madam. 5 decades of bloodshed, 5 decades of suppression, 5 decades of being victim of failed politics. It's time for us to give what we deserve, what the people of Afghanistan deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this very, very heartfelt testimony. I think that it reaches all of us. In a case, it does get to me. So thank you so much. We will have time afterwards to discuss, as said, and then to answer any questions. But I would like now to give the floor to Mrs. Aliye Yilmaz, Assistant Professor at Süleyman Demirel University in Turkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Distinguished parliamentarians, honorable participants. Today I stand here to once again bring to your attention the suffering endured by millions of Afghan people, especially women whose voices have been silenced. Being women in today's Afghanistan means fighting for dignity and survival. They are excluded from education, pushed out of the workforce, and arrested from public life. What used to help people move forward is now just a fight to survive. Poverty is deepening, hunger is spreading, families are forced to make impossible choices. For many women, the question of the future is reduced to a single question: how can I survive today? Even this burden is not equal for everyone. Women living in rural areas and those from different ethnic and religious groups face much even harsher conditions. Language barriers, geographic isolation, and social restriction make them invisible. Their suffering rarely appears on official reports. Their stories do not make headlines. Their voices are absent from global discussions. Today, Afghan women's suffering is not only due to internal conflict. The country is shaken by rising tensions with neighboring states. Renewed tensions along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border and regional instability have made life even harsher for women. On the other side, rising tensions between Iran, Israel, and the United States threaten all efforts for regional stability and directly impact Afghan women's lives. Global power struggles risk pushing their voices even further into silence while they are without basic rights. Yet Afghan women are not a symbol of weakness. They are teachers secretly providing education. They are health workers quietly serving their communities. They are human rights defenders risking their safety to protect others. They are mothers keeping their families afloat under unbearable pressure. They remain the unseen backbone of Afghan society. But today, their suffering risks becoming normalized. When injustice lasts long enough, the world becomes accustomed to it. Silence becomes normal. Absence becomes invisible. We must not allow this. At times, the priority of the world appears deeply unbalanced. When even a disruption in the natural order, something as unusual as a penguin appearing far from its natural home, can quickly capture global curiosity. We must ask ourselves a difficult question: why does the suffering of millions of Afghan women fail to command this same attention? For many Afghans, displacement and migration have become unavoidable. Yet even under the best conditions, migration often leads to gradual assimilation and the erosion of identity, culture, and belonging. For Afghan women, it can mean losing not only their homes, but also their voices and the communities that used to support them. The question before the international community is not whether Afghan women deserve support. This is not even a question. The real question is, will the world see Afghan women as essential partners in building peace, stability, and a democratic future? Or will it continue to leave them on the margins of politics, diplomacy, and global attention? No country can achieve stability while half its population is excluded. No society can be rebuilt while women are silenced. No future can be sustainable without women's participations. Supporting Afghan women is not only a humanitarian responsibility, it is a strategic necessity for regional peace and long-term stability. The European Union and international partners can play a crucial role by supporting girls' access to education, strengthening Afghan women's civil society networks, ensuring women's participation and dialogue and decision-making, protecting women human rights defenders. These are not symbolic gestures. They are investment in a stable future. Afghan women do not ask for pity. They ask for opportunity. They ask for recognition. They ask for the right to live with dignity. Their voices may be suppressed, but their hope is not extinguished. If we truly listen beyond headlines, beyond statistics, beyond political narratives, we hear courage, we hear resilience, we hear determinations. Standing with Afghan women is standing for justice. Supporting them is defending human dignity. Including them is investing in peace. History will not ask if we know. History will ask if we acted. Thank you, and thank you for all acted.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for these words. I have to say, I believe that you're reading in a different language than you're speaking. What language? You can see this, but I can see it, and I see that the notes are in a different language that you're speaking. And I think that's really impressive. Which language is your?
Turkish.
Is Turkish? Okay. I thought it was very impressive. So thank you for that, and we will discuss later a few of the things that you mentioned. We're going to the third guest speaker today, Mrs. Danish, development practitioner and journalist for Afghanistan International Television. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Madam Chair, Honourable Member of European Parliament, distinguished member of Afghan delegation, ladies and gentlemen. When the space for civil society disappears, when journalists are silenced, and when young women are banned from universities and school, a country loses not risking its freedom, but also its future. It's a privilege to address you today in this chamber, a place that represents democratic values, human rights, and the power of representative institution. At a time when these principles are at risk in Afghanistan, your attention and engagement are more important than ever. I speak to you today not as a journalist working in exile, but also as an Afghan woman who report daily on the pain and disparity of Afghan women and girls in Afghanistan, but yet to see the resilience and courage Afghan women is trying to keep alive the ideal of freedom, dignity, and civic participation. Since the return of Taliban to power in 2021, Afghanistan's civic space has been systematically dismantled, independent media outlets have been shut down, civil society organizations have been forced to close or operate underground, women have been systematically erased from public life, education, and employment. The policy was described by the UN expert as a state of gender apartheid. Exclusion of the half of the population from public, civil, and economic life. The voice that once represented hope and democratic participation are now threatened by fear and repression. And yet, even under one of the most restrictive political environments in the world today, Afghan civil society, especially women, hasn't given up. Across the country and increasingly across the Afghan diaspora, Afghan women, journalists, activists, and educators continue to resist Taliban atrocity. Some have run underground education network for girls who have been banned from schools and universities. Some of them continue independent journalism from exile, ensuring that the world does not lose sight of what is happening inside Afghanistan. Others organize digital networks that connect activists, document human rights abuses to make sure that Taliban brutality are not going unnoticed. However, this generation cannot stand alone. Today, Afghan civil society, particularly women, face three critical challenges. The first challenge is shrinking global attention toward Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the international community response often remains largely reactive, expressed mainly through condemnation and statements. While these messages are important and send a strong sign of solidarity with the people of Afghanistan, but this is not enough. They have not changed the reality on the ground in Afghanistan. Therefore, the absence of a strong and more coordinated action emboldened the Taliban, particularly in their systematic restriction against women and girls in Afghanistan. For many Afghans, there is a growing perception that while the world continues to condemn these policies, the practical consequences for this responsible remains limited. Standing up against the systematic exclusion of Afghanistan women is therefore not only a political responsibility, but it is a moral responsibility shared by each one of us and every institution around the world. The European Union, and particularly the European Parliament, can play a critical role in supporting Afghan women and civil society to make sure Taliban are held accountable. The second challenge is a lack of protection for Afghan civil society and activists. Many remain at risk inside Afghanistan, while others in exile struggle with uncertainty and with limited support. Many members of this movement have been arrested, tortured, forced into hiding inside Afghanistan. For journalists, particularly for women journalists inside Afghanistan, it is extremely alarming. According to the finding from the Center for Freedom of Expression, there are currently about no female journalists working about in 20 provinces of Afghanistan, and around 70% of female journalists have been forced to self-censorship. The third challenge is the collapse of resource and financial support. Many organizations that once promoted human rights, education, and community development have lost their resources necessary to continue their work. Allow me to suggest 3 areas that the European Parliament in particular can support Afghan diaspora, Afghan women in a very meaningful way. First, to sustain and expand support for Afghan civil society, independent media, particularly those operating in exile through digital platforms. This organization remains a vital channel for accountability, information, and civic engagement for millions of Afghans inside the country. Second, strengthening protection mechanism for Afghan journalists, activists, and scholars at risk. Many members of civil society who were forced to leave the country after the Taliban returned to power now face uncertainty in neighboring countries. Third, ensure that civil society and democratic force of Afghanistan remained meaningfully included in all international discussion about Afghanistan. Experiencing over the past several years, it's shown that Taliban has demonstrated no willingness to engage in genuine dialogue and demonstrate governance or on democratic governments or fundamental rights. Therefore, its international engagement continue. If international engagement continue with Taliban only, it risks excluding the voice that truly represent Afghanistan. The future of Afghanistan cannot be shaped through engagement with a group who erased half of its population from the society. It must include Afghan civil society, women leaders, journalists, youth representatives in order to work on a democratic and with democratic actors in order to continue to work for a just and inclusive Afghanistan. And any interaction with the Taliban in Afghanistan should therefore be guided by a clear principle, including respect for the fundamental rights of women in Afghanistan. Today, Afghanistan is experiencing one of the most severe restrictions on civil society and women's rights in the modern world. But the history of Afghanistan is not only one of repression. It's the story of resilience. It's the story of young women who continue to study in secret classrooms. It's the story of journalists who continue their work and reporting even after being forced into exile. And it's the story of a generation that refused to give up on a dream for a more just and democratic Afghanistan. Afghanistan civil society has not disappeared, it's simply been pushed to the shadow. Now the question before and in front of us today is whether the international community will help bring him back into the light or not. Because Taliban may close the door of schools and universities, silence journalists, and ban an institution, but they cannot extinguish the hope of a generation determined to reclaim its future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for offering your very inspiring perspective also on the diversity of the female experience also in Afghanistan. Thank you so much. And then we move on to our last speaker for today, Mr. Zalmai Nishat, founder and executive chair of Mosaic Global Foundation. The floor is yours.
Chair of Afghanistan Delegation, Ms. Harmada van der Walle, Vice Chairs Alessander Moriti and Dirk Goerting, and honorable members of the European Parliament, distinguished colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today and for the European Parliament's continued attention to the situation in Afghanistan. Already my colleagues have described the severe realities facing the people of Afghanistan, the dismantling of democratic institutions, the repression of civil society, and the systematic exclusion of women and girls from public life, as well as suppression of diverse communities. These realities deserve world's attention. But my remarks today will focus on a broader strategic question. Why should Afghanistan's political future matter to Europe today? Too often, the global conversation about Afghanistan has been framed solely as humanitarian crisis or a human rights tragedy. Both are true, but neither tell the full story. Afghanistan is also a strategic question for Europe, touching directly on migration, regional instability, transnational extremism, and credibility of democratic values in international policy. If Afghanistan remains locked in long-term authoritarian isolation under the Taliban, the consequences will not remain contained within its borders. Migration pressures will grow, extremist networks will find space to reorganize, regional tensions will deepen. In other words, Afghanistan's political trajectory matters not only for the people of Afghanistan, it matters for European security and stability. This raises a critical question for policymakers. Is there a credible political alternative to the Taliban rule? For several years, prevailing assumption has been that Afghanistan's democratic opposition is too fragmented to serve such an alternative. This perception has shaped international policy. Yet, our research suggests that this assumption is increasingly outdated. Over the past several years, the Mosaic Global Foundation has convened a structured dialogue among political groups, civil society leaders, resistance representatives, and diaspora experts through Cambridge Afghanistan series. This initiative sought to answer a central question. Could Afghanistan's diverse democratic actors develop a shared political vision? The result of this multi-year process is the Comprehensive Composite Roadmap, or CCR. The CCR is not a program of a single political faction. Rather, it represents a synthesis emerging from dialogue across multiple strands of Afghanistan's society, political actors, resistance groups, women's organizations, civil society networks, policy thinkers, and friends of Afghanistan. What is remarkable about this process is the degree of convergence it reveals. Across ideological, ethnic, generational lines, the democratic opposition increasingly shares a common framework for Afghanistan's future political order. There is a broad agreement that Afghanistan must return to a constitutional system grounded in democratic legitimacy. Therefore, there is overwhelming consensus on three major principles. First, people's right to self-determination. Second, human rights. And finally, equality, including gender equality. In other words, women's rights and girls' education are not negotiable but must form a central pillar of the state in Afghanistan. And there is a shared recognition that Afghanistan must once again become a responsible member of the international community. This convergence is also visible in broader political initiatives. Platforms such as the Vienna Process for Democratic Afghanistan have brought together dozens of political actors, resistance groups, and civil society leaders to discuss democratic transition. Women's organizations and civil society networks have likewise demonstrated remarkable cohesion despite operating under extremely difficult conditions. But another development deserves particular attention, and it is one that fundamentally challenges the Taliban's ideological narrative. For many years, the Taliban have sought to represent their policies, particularly the exclusion of women from education, work, and public life, as rooted in Islamic tradition. Yet, over the past year, we have seen a growing civil and religious challenge to this claim, emerging from across the Muslim world. In 2025, leading Islamic scholars and political leaders gathered in Islamabad under the auspices of the Muslim World League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, issuing what became known as the Islamabad Declaration. That declaration affirmed clearly that education for women and girls is a fundamental Islamic principle and that denying it has no basis in Islamic jurisprudence. Numerous religious authorities and political leaders across the Muslim world, including several Gulf states, supported the declaration. This matters because it demonstrates that the challenge to the Taliban's ideology is not coming from only from Western governments or international organizations. It is also emerging from within the Islamic scholarly tradition itself. Civil society actors have played a significant role in amplifying this challenge. Initiatives supported by organizations such as Women for Afghanistan and the Malala Fund have helped mobilize international attention around the rights of girls and women in Afghanistan. Together, these religious, political, and civil society initiatives represent something powerful, a civil religious counter-narrative to Taliban's claim of religious legitimacy. In other words, the debate over Afghanistan's future is no longer simply a geopolitical contest. It is also an intellectual and moral contest over the meaning of Islamic governance in the 21st century. This broader context should matter to Europe because it means that engagement with Afghanistan's democratic opposition is not an isolated Western project. It is part of the wider international movement involving Muslim scholars, civil society networks, and regional actors that seek to restore Afghanistan's place in a pluralistic, internationally connected world. For the past several years, international policy toward Afghanistan has focused primarily on humanitarian assistance and limited technical engagement with the Taliban authorities. Humanitarian aid is essential, but humanitarian aid alone cannot resolve Afghanistan's political crisis. If the international community wishes to see a different future for Afghanistan, it must also engage with those forces working to build that alternative. Europe is uniquely positioned to play a constructive role. The European Union has long been one of Afghanistan's most important partners in supporting democratic institutions, education, and civil society. That legacy remains significant. Allow me, therefore, to suggest several areas where European policy could evolve. First, the European Union could establish structured dialogue with representatives of Afghanistan's democratic opposition, including political actors, civil society leaders, resistance groups, and women's organizations. The British Foreign Office has made this a major pillar of its policy on Afghanistan, and it is dealing with the illegitimate Taliban regime. It is something the EU and the individual European countries should emulate. Second, Europe can strengthen Afghanistan's civil society networks, particularly those led by women and youth, both inside and across the diaspora. Third, European institutions can support platforms that facilitate coordination among democratic opposition actors, helping build the political coherence that any future transition will require. Fourth, European Union can amplify and support emerging Islamic scholarly consensus rejecting the Taliban's interpretation of religion, collaborating with partners in the Muslim world who are challenging this ideology. Finally, Afghanistan must remain on Europe's strategic agenda. In an era of overlapping global crises, there is always a risk that Afghanistan fade from international attention, but neglect would carry consequences. A politically isolated Afghanistan risks becoming once again a source of instability whose effects extend far beyond its borders. Conversely, an Afghanistan that gradually moves toward a legitimate, inclusive governance based on people's self-determination, human rights, equality, could contribute to regional stability and reduce many of the pressures currently facing the international community. Let me conclude with a simple observation. Afghanistan today is often portrayed as a country without alternatives. Yet, across Afghanistan society and across the diaspora, people continue to organize, debate, and imagine a democratic future. The Comprehensive Composite Roadmap is one expression of that effort. It demonstrates that political groups, despite years of conflict and division, can build consensus around democratic principles and inclusive governance. The question before us, therefore, is not whether such an alternative exists. The question is whether the international community, and Europe in particular, is prepared to engage with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nishat, also for offering this also political perspective on what a possible future could be and how the European Union can support it. Thank you to all four speakers for your interventions. I would also like to thank you for sticking very well to the time. We should take note in this Parliament. It's possible to speak within the allocated time. So thank you so much for that. It opens up a bit more room for discussion. We have two colleagues joining us today. Yes. Mr. Farski from the EPP, you have the floor.
It's on. It's fine. Thanks a lot for sharing the incredible experience from Afghanistan. It's something that is difficultly imaginable in the middle of Europe in these days, but I understand that the situation is not livable anymore. And I deeply understand that you want to change the regime. But after 20 years of, let's say, military presence of Western world in your country, has anything changed for better, or is it even worse than before the war that before the year 2020 or 2001? Has anything improved, and if any, is it possible to build on, or is there any change that might happen through the influence on the of the outside world, of outer world of the Afghanistan, or is it possible to change the situation in Afghanistan in a long-term period and standing only with the help of the Afghan people and with their presence? How do you can imagine the changing the situation with the Afghan forces, Afghan people, Afghan influence? That's something that will take time, I'm sure, will be really difficult. But will prevail, hopefully. So, but how? How? That's my question. What's your imagine?
Thank you so much. Colleague, do you have the question for any particular speaker, or just a general reflection maybe for all, from all four? Okay. Then I will speak here. I will start here to my left.
Thank you for the question about the changes that happened in Afghanistan over the past 20 years, just before August 2021. I think together, the people of Afghanistan, along with the international community, try to build a better Afghanistan. All the credit goes to our people, because more than 70,000 Afghan troops were killed in this war to protect the security of the world, basically. We were in the full front of, protecting the world order and security. However, and in that period of 20 years, not only buildings were built, schools were built, hospitals, the constitution of Afghanistan, which was, despite all the, probably comments and different views about it, was one of the most democratic constitutions in the region, offering equality for all citizens, including all gender and religious and ethnic background people. There was a parliament with 69 women members of it. I was one of the members of the parliament, and we have another member also who is here with us. You name it, all these changes. There was a dynamic, vibrant media. I think one of the most dynamic in the region, I could claim. In the morning when you wake up in Afghanistan, you could see girls with black and white uniform going to school. Every day they were dreaming of a better life for themselves, for the future of Afghanistan, but despite the fact that there was war. And that we were in the full front of fighting violent extremism groups. The soil of Afghanistan was used to endanger the global security in 2001, and that's why the international community went to Afghanistan. The international community did not come to Afghanistan just to protect the people of Afghanistan. They came because they wanted to protect their own security. However, all of that, buildings and all of that, was one side. For me, the important side was the transformation of generation, the transformation of the society. When I was traveling to the villages in Afghanistan, I could see how much the perspectives have changed. I could see how much the people have, the seeds of freedom was cultivated in the people's minds and beliefs. They knew that what does that mean for a woman to be educated and to work outside. They knew, they understood the importance of, having a free press and free media. This was not a tangible change. This was not something you could see like a building mushrooming in the city in Kabul or other provinces. This was a change that was rooted deep down into the society. However, when the Doha Agreement was signed with the Taliban, and I was part of the negotiation with them, thinking the Taliban have changed, they have become Taliban 2.0. We were so naive to believe what narrative that was created for them. When the Doha Agreement was signed with them, first of all, our security forces were demoralized as a result of that. The handover of Afghanistan happened to the Taliban. I call it handover because I don't think it was Taliban taking over by force. And every change we experienced in the last 20 years kind of fall like a castle, from constitution to like a sand castle. However, one thing that did not collapse, and that is the spirit of fighting for freedom. And that's why we are today. The fact that we speak before you, it comes with a huge cost to us, to our family, to our community. But we are determined to fight for freedom that the people of Afghanistan deserve. And when I say the people of Afghanistan, there is no official record, but I mean 95% of the population in Afghanistan. So yes, we are the victim of global politics failure. We did not sign the Doha Agreement with the Taliban. The world signed it with the pretext that the Taliban will protect them. But look what's happening today. And the impact of the regional insecurity, the Middle East, it's going to even further encourage instability in Afghanistan, as a result of which, in an already volatile situation, economically, human rights-wise, there will be more migrants to Europe. So those people who want to engage with the Taliban only for the fact that, they want to deport Afghans who have committed crimes or otherwise illegal migrant and avoid migrants coming to Europe, I think this is not going to work, sir. The solution is we need to make Afghanistan a safe country, not only by silencing the guns, but safe under the protection of law, under the protection of constitutional order. So everybody goes back to their country, including us. We feel that we are here temporarily, we're fighting for a better Afghanistan. So instead of looking at the root causes, we're actually looking at the leaves. And this time, we're not asking for NATO bombardment of our country. What we are asking is allow us, embolden, give us the enabling environment so that we can make our country better.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the question. Maybe one of the other speakers would like to reflect on this. Yes, please.
Thank you so much for the question. One thing which I really want to note here is that I want to request it that please do not, by saying it is difficult, 20 years of work and international community contribution didn't work in Afghanistan. No, it's not true. Let's not forget the sacrifice that people of Afghanistan made over the last 20 years, especially we lost more than 70,000 of our soldiers who fight for dignity, freedom, and who defend Afghanistan and Afghanistan people against the war of Taliban and the US in Afghanistan, US and its allies. 20 years of war of international communities, US and allies, but we sacrificed. We lost 70,000 soldiers in front and frontline. And that shouldn't be going to unnoticed. And that shows that people of Afghanistan is determined for freedom, dignity, and their participation in to shape their own future. And also, I'm the example of the last 20 years. I'm the generation of 20 years. I've been raised in the 20 years. I've lived the 20 years. I've lived the war of 20 years of US and its allies, and I've been raised in 20 years. But I can't say I'm the generation of war. Yes, I am, but I'm also the generation of democracy, a generation with determined to reclaim its future. So let's give us the place, the platforms we are determined to discuss on our future. It's easy to say 20 years didn't work. Maybe the approach was wrong. But it doesn't mean the Afghan people are not ready. The Afghan people are determined to shape its future, its democratic future, but we are not here to accept what atrocity Taliban are imposing on us. We are determined to our future and our freedom. Thank you.
Sorry, briefly before I give the floor to colleague De La Pisa.
Very quickly. Thank you very much. You asked about the change and my colleagues responded. And I would like to, on the possibility of change, add one point, is that the people of Afghanistan see the Taliban as a terrorist group. And it is a result of the Taliban coming to power. As it was mentioned time and again, it was a geopolitical decision. And also the Taliban roots are very well known to the people of Afghanistan, is that it is in regional geopolitics. It is not from within Afghanistan. It has nothing to do with the culture there, as I mentioned in my comments. If we are celebrating the resistance of the people of Ukraine against invasion of Putin and Russia, we need to give the same courtesy and the same rights to the people of Afghanistan to fight against a terrorist group. And basically I want to underline here the right of the people of Afghanistan for the armed resistance. I am not a member of any armed resistance group, but the CCR, the Comprehensive Composite Roadmap that we have drafted based on 20 roadmaps and proposals of the opposition, they included the resistance forces as well. So I wanted to acknowledge, to give basically giving them, the resistance forces, the courtesy of fighting to liberate their country. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this addition. Señora De La Pisa, ¿quiere hacer una pregunta? Sí, tenemos interpretación. Estaba ya solicitada.
Muchísimas gracias. Empiezo pidiendo disculpas por no haber llegado al principio de las presentaciones. Pido disculpas por no haber podido llegar al principio de sus presentaciones. Tenemos un lunes muy ajetreado aquí en el Parlamento. También hay la interparlamentaria de la delegación. Sí. No, sorry. No, estaba pidiendo disculpas por haber llegado tarde. Se conviven las reuniones de varias delegaciones hoy lunes en el Parlamento Europeo y nos tenemos que dividir entre audiencias porque se merecen toda la atención. O sea, son invitados que están dando su vida. En el caso suyo está clarísimo. Me ha parecido impresionante la visión de alguien que ha vivido 20 años en esta situación, ¿no? Y que no conoce casi otra realidad para su pueblo. Y es verdad que, de alguna manera, hoy ha quedado claro cómo la acción de la Unión Europea se limita a casi no proporcionar alternativa, ¿no? Nos limitamos a dar ayuda humanitaria. En esta delegación muchas veces se ha subrayado el riesgo que esto supone, porque muchas veces los recursos, aunque tienen buena intención, no llegan a buen destino y muchas veces incluso se utilizan contra el pueblo afgano, ¿no? Y eso es realmente una preocupación muchas veces de encontrar entidades confiables, ¿no?, con las que podamos trabajar para asegurar que esos recursos van a quien lo necesitan y no a lo contrario, incluso a armas. Me ha parecido muy interesante la opción de Mosaic Global Foundation que ha planteado de ayudar a una oposición, ¿no? Eso creo que es lo ideal, ¿no? Cómo conseguimos que crezcan o que se fomenten, que haya grupos políticos que realmente puedan hacer frente a grupos terroristas. Es verdad que la diferencia de fuerzas es muy difícil. Unos son terroristas, otros querrán ir por una vía democrática y es verdad que a veces en el uso de la fuerza, pues el miedo y el riesgo de la vida y también de la falta de presencia internacional, ¿no? Entonces, ¿cómo se puede conseguir para que haya éxito, ¿no? Para que realmente estas iniciativas políticas tengan el apoyo internacional, también la visibilidad hacia afuera, para que esa visibilidad de alguna manera proteja a esas personas de su vida y a esos proyectos para que puedan tener éxito, ¿no? ¿Cómo hacer para que esas iniciativas sean también plurales, ¿no? Porque muchas veces en países donde se ha intentado algo parecido ha habido un apoyo a una línea y se ha podido caer casi en otra línea ideológica, ¿no? Como un turno de unos y otros, ¿no? ¿Cómo está trabajando Mosaic Foundation en este sentido para que se garantice la pluralidad de oportunidades, de iniciativas y que así pueda ser lo más democráticamente posible, ¿no? Cómo se utilizan los recursos que se están donando a la Fundación, ¿no? Como he investigado, no sabía que iba a llegar tarde y investigué un poco en sus perfiles y vi que hay la posibilidad de hacer donaciones, parece que es algo que está funcionando bien, que la inquietud de las personas es apoyar al pueblo afgano. ¿Cómo se utilizan esos recursos luego para realmente apoyar a proyectos políticos que puedan ser una oposición en el futuro que de alguna manera aparte o derrote a los terroristas talibanes que hoy se han hecho con el poder? Gracias.
Gracias, Margarita. Pues, Mr. Nishat.
Thank you very much for the wonderful question. I will start with the issue of the aids that you mentioned, aids going to Afghanistan. In 2022, just after the 1 year after the regaining of power by the Taliban, I wrote a piece in Newsweek, and in that piece I mentioned that the international community is sending around $40 million per week to the Taliban under the name of humanitarian assistance. In 1 week, 40 million and in cash plates. And that is helping the Taliban to consolidate their power. Of course, they have some other revenues like from illegal mining, from drug trafficking, from, I'm sure you know that they are also even started crystal, the production of amphetamine. Also, they have some other revenues. They are taxing heavily the poor people of Afghanistan as well. But that aid of $40 million a week helped them to some extent consolidate their power in Afghanistan. So that accountability of the aid is very, very important. And thank you so much for raising that issue. But on the question of the diversity of the groups that have gathered, and for example, the process that we lead at the Mosaic Global Foundation with the bringing of the different groups with a vision on future of Afghanistan, with their policies on. They are from all communities of Afghanistan, from, for example, confessionally from Shias, Sunnis, Ismailis, also from ethnic communities of Afghanistan, Hazara, Pashtun, Tajik, Uzbek, and also in terms of women and men. So there's that diversity is always taken into consideration. In terms of how to assist these, in my recommendation, I said these processes, for example, the Vienna process for democratic Afghanistan has been held so far five times. And the most important thing that I would like to add is that in this policy, the United Kingdom on Afghanistan has adopted engagement with opposition, with the democratic opposition of Afghanistan. The European Union needs to follow that. In its official policy, it must have policy of engaging with the democratic opposition of Afghanistan. Once that policy has been adopted by the European Union decision makers, then obviously there will be interaction between the European Union member states and European Union itself with the groups that are coordinating among the democratic opposition. So that would be the solution. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your answer to this question. I don't know if any of the other speakers would like to reflect on this question.
Just briefly, I think the future solution for Afghanistan is to give different voices the space to talk genuinely about what is best for their country. Because we all often think that, what's happening in the rest of the world is a standalone problem. We don't see the interconnectivity of the problems. And, today it's Afghanistan, tomorrow it can be anywhere else. So now Afghanistan is in the epicenter of conflict, the regional conflict, war, serious human rights crisis, humanitarian crisis. And Afghanistan is a rich country. It breaks my heart to ask for humanitarian assistance because we are a rich country, poor nation, due to war and wrongdoings of all of us, including our global allies. So I'm not campaigning for humanitarian aid to be stopped because this is, even if it's reaching minimum number of it is reaching people, it must continue. But focusing on humanitarian aid and, issuing statement to condemn human rights violation only is not enough. That's what most of the countries do. They issue a statement to condemn. I think we should move from words to action. We need more than that. Action means, as stated, and I would like to repeat, there are several platforms that nowadays organize dialogues, bringing a diverse group of people, Afghan men and women, a young generation from different groups to talk about their country. So that space is very limited and very vulnerable because a lot of countries don't like to host those kind of meetings and conferences. And it makes the environment even more frustrating. Like, for instance, 2 years ago, we wanted to organize the All-Afghan Women Summit, bringing together like 100 plus women, including a lot of them from inside Afghanistan. We basically knocked every door to host this. We were lucky, Albania, thanks to their government, hosted this. But can you imagine? Everyone speaks about the situation of women in Afghanistan, but when you ask them to host a conference, a summit, for us to prioritize our needs, this was not possible unless we had to reach out to different countries, including Albania. Or we organized through the organization that I'm sitting in the board, Women for Afghanistan, we organized dialogues. We wanted to organize dialogues in the region and beyond. It's not easy to have that space. So it's important to recognize the agency of people, especially women-led organizations. Inside Afghanistan, a lot of people talk about support to women and girls in Afghanistan. But I simply, 2 years ago, in the United Nations General Assembly, in the side event, I asked when Secretary General Guterres was also there in the meeting, I asked for scholarship for women and girls in Afghanistan. The UK government recently decided to to cancel students' visa for Afghan women and girls. So scholarship, providing education space is the basic that we can do for now until our country is safe enough for girls to go to school. Supporting women who are, nowadays, women-led organizations are the only platform in Afghanistan that can give job, navigating the challenging situation and security challenge they're facing inside Afghanistan. They give jobs to the women, led movements inside Afghanistan or create jobs for women in Afghanistan. They get little, like maybe 0.something% of the funding. So I think we need to act both strategically as suggested. The EU needs to put Afghanistan as part of their strategic priority because it is an important country. Sooner or later, it's a silent tsunami for now. Secondly, human rights and humanitarian situation is something that they need to keep emphasizing and addressing, but it needs more than that attention. It needs attention in terms of political landscape change. Without changing that political ecosystem, nothing else will actually change.
Thank you very much for the question and the answers. I see that we have Mr. Sieber joining us. I don't know if you would like to ask a question to the guests.
Yes. I have a question to Ms. Kofi, and I First, I would like to say that I'm very happy to meet you all and see you here, and I salute your bravery in your fight. Ms. Kofi, when you were, and I hope I'm not confused here by my notes, but when you were negotiating with the Taliban about the peace process, what do you think we in the West and the international community misunderstood, that we thought that they would really keep their promise to uphold women's rights? Where did we went wrong in our assumption?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Lucas Sipper, for the question. First of all, I must say that, in the negotiation with the Taliban, Europe as a continent who have really invested a lot of money and also blood through NATO were not leading. They were not involved. This is something, when I first left Afghanistan and I came to Europe and I had meetings with many policymakers, I warned them about the lack of leadership from Europe when it comes to, leading some of these global political dynamics. So again, my request is that Europe should demonstrate further leadership when it comes to protecting the values for which Europe is known for, the values of democracy, human rights, meaningfully supporting the voiceless and giving them the space. Because that makes Europe different from the rest of the world. So Europe was not meaningfully involved, except Germany, Norway, and some countries who were there as friends. This was a negotiation bilaterally between the Taliban and the United States. And in that context, even the government of Afghanistan, I was a political opposition, but the government was an institution that was built as a result of all the investment, of collective investment, sacrifices of us and our partners, was not also part of it. It was sidelined. And I think it was a mistake. The Taliban demonstrated that they have changed. And I quoted some of their members before. I think they wanted to make us believe that they have changed, and so that paved the way for their return. And some diplomats in Washington think tanks also promoted that narrative of 2.0 Taliban. They have changed. However, unfortunately, the moment they came to Afghanistan back, and I was in Kabul, there was a female school in front of my house. The next day when I woke up, I saw that our little girls with black and white uniform no longer are allowed to go to school. They target education because they know an educated mother will never allow her son to pick up a gun and fight. An educated mother will use rather pen and encourage her children to use voice and pen and writing, which is much more powerful than gun in many occasions. So they actually make, I think, all of us, especially some of those who were involved in peace process and the Western diplomat, full. They made full out of us by saying they have changed. In reality, they haven't. In some policies, they have become even more harsher. Like when they were in power first time, they allow women to become medical doctors and nurses and midwives. But they don't allow women to go to become medical doctors. And my worry is that, coming from a province which has the highest number of maternal mortality in Afghanistan, my worry is that in 1 or 2 years, our health system will be completely disrupted because there are not enough female doctors and female nurses and midwives. Maternal mortality is skyrocketing. Women access to health services, primary health service, is a major issue. So I think they have really, managed to make us believe that they have changed, but they haven't. Maybe some of them have different views because they want to live in a better life, but they're not decision makers. They haven't demonstrated any change. They are sitting enjoying the ministerial position, but when you ask them why you're not allowing to allow girls to go to school, they're like the leader in Kandahar. I mean, if they are really enjoying the privilege of being, received by these diplomats with red carpet in different capitals, they should also be held accountable.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the question. I would like to ask a question myself, if I may. It's a question for Mrs. Yilmaz. I was very, I was triggered. I was interested by your remark that Even under the best conditions, migration means a certain degree of assimilation and loss of roots and own culture. I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate a little bit more on that based on your knowledge of the experience of Afghan women in Europe who are maybe, experiencing that sort of conflict between their own culture from Afghanistan and the demands of migrating into Europe, and of course a certain maybe expectation that at some point you will integrate and be able to find your way here as well.
تشکر. در سیاست سه تا اصل که از ژئوکالچر یکی از بحث‌های بسیار مهم است. بحث ژئوکالچر قسمی که اقبال لاهوری میگه من نه شرقی هستم نه غربی هستم. دیت ای جنگ بر ما قدر بزرگ بود که ما نه شرقی شدیم نه غربی شدیم. امروز در یک کشور غربی کسایی که مثلا مهاجر شدن یک خو از نظر ژئوپلیتیک اگه ببینیم واقعا یک فوریایی که در قسمت کوچ و آواره شدن انسان ها وجود داره و دوباره ستلمنت گرفتن از اینا بسیار آسان بود، ولی انطباق از اینا مشکل است. از نگاه کلچری واقعا اگر ما تعداد را که امروز در اروپا از 40 سال به این طرف مهاجر هستن ببینیم، ساخت فرهنگ برشون بسیار سخت بوده. اینا به اینجا انطباق حاصل نکردن، وقتی پس افغانستان هم میرن با همون مشکل روبرو هستن که در اروپا بودن. و امروز یکی از ماده هایی که من اینجا گذاشته بودم و شاید قصدی هم بود، مثلا کشورهای اروپایی کسایی را که به اصطلاح اقامت هم دادن سرازی توجه نکردن که یا چقدر میتونن در این جامعه خود پیدا بکنن و یک تعدادشون امروز با جرم و جنایت روبرو هستن. من فکر میکنم یک مشکل عمیق فرهنگی در اینجا وجود داره. اگر ما در بورد زنا ببینیم، امیال بعضی از زنایی هستن که از اروپا دوباره روانشون میکنن، ولی اینا کسایی هستن که با مشکلات و غیر از مشکلات حیاتی، یعنی وقت پس افغانستان هم میرن دیگه از اینا هیچ چیزی ساخته نمیشه. یعنی میشه تو اینجا من فکر میکنم مراکز سایکولوژیکی در خود اروپا برای مهاجرین وجود داره و این بر زنای افغانستان میتونه تقویت بکنه. شما میتونین مثال کوچ سوریه را بزنین که بر ترکیه 3 میلیون مهاجر یک بار سرازیر شده بود و اینا مراکز را از اتحادیه اروپا تقویت کرده بودن. این یک راه بوده میتونه. از طرف دیگه اینا کامنایی که با وجود آمده یا باید تقویت شون. امروز مثلا پرسان میکنن که اینقدر گروپی که وجود داره کدام یکی میتونه تقویت شود. خب هر جمع با خودشان میتونه. مثلا زبانهای مادری را امروز در شامل مفردات ایژوکیشن کردن یا شامل مفردات تعلیم تربیهشان کردن، اینا میتونه زیادتر شود.
Basically, she says that there is a debate in politics about geoculture, and she also recited a poem from Iqbal, a Persian poet from Pakistan. Says we neither could become an Easterner nor a Westerner. Says she basically draws that she talks about the cultural integration in Europe and the challenges of it. Sometimes it is necessary, support is not there for that to happen. And in relation to some people who might have lived long time in Europe, because of unavailability of enough support, they have not integrated in new culture. Also, when they have gone back to their own original country, which is Afghanistan, they still do not belong there anymore. So, as a kind of solution to that, she talked about the psychosocial possibility of support, making it available. And the example that she gave was the 3 million Syrians who came to Turkey, and European Union helped the government of Turkey to be able to provide such support.
یک مثال ساده شی بود که ما در اولین مرحله که کوچ به ترکیه سرازیر شده بود، حدود 300-400 نفر فقط در ترکیه دکترای دارای تجربه را داشتیم و اینا نمیتونستن نه کار بگیرن نه هم برای جمعیت خود اون طرف 1 میلیون آدمی که برای با مشکلات صحی روبرو بودن و اینا انشورنس ندارن. مثلا اتحادیه اروپا هرچند که مثل خانم کوفی گفتن هرچند که درهای زیادی را تک تک کردیم ولی لاجواب بود.
افغانستان بودن دکتر.
نه اینا کسایی که با کوچ آمدن اینجا.
Yeah, for example, she gave an example of a number of doctors, over 100 medical doctors, who were kind of unable to practice medicine, but despite their efforts to see if that's a possibility, it didn't happen. So those kind of things are important.
It's a known issue. Thank you so much for bringing it up. I think that this concludes the round of questions and your interventions. I would like to thank you again for being here, for sharing your experiences, the very rich diversity in experiences, which is something which every time I'm surprised about, because as has been said today, we tend to think of Afghanistan from the perspective of crisis. Perma-crisis almost, but what always touches me is the enormous resilience of the Afghan people inside the country and outside the country, and how the perspectives are rich and varied, and I think it has a lot of value. It's very valuable that we are sharing these experiences here today, also with colleagues. We have reserved it was a question or a suggestion of Mr. Sieper, 10 minutes at the end of this meeting, so about now, for an exchange of views among ourselves. Maybe I would like to ask to the two colleagues who are already here, if you have any ideas of possible follow-ups or things that we could do as this European Parliament. That's something that we would like to use this time for. So please go ahead.
Oh, now it's working. Thanks especially for the answers for my questions and my points. Your answers corresponded with the answers I got from my friend from Kabul. I spoke with him some weeks ago and asked him for the situation for the 20 years of military operation, how it influenced Afghanistan, and he told me almost the same. He told me that the society has changed a lot, that there's a seat of freedom, that it changed also the position of women in the society, and that's something that will not change in the future, even if the Taliban tries to do its best. Or the worst, I think. So that's something that is... let's say the light in the end of the tunnel that is helpful. That's some hope that we can point at, and I hope that it's something that will grow in the society and that will influence it so much that it will change it throughout. That's the future I would like to see of Afghanistan. The position of European Union is limited. Frankly said, we really support your movement. We really support your will, and we hope that you will be, with our support, able to change the future of Afghan people. But I think that it's really mostly up to you. Yeah, we can support you, but we cannot change your country from outside. The change has to rise from your society. So thanks for all the answers. It's important to have you here, and just to say, yeah, European Union supports you, European Parliament supports you in your way to freedom.
Thank you so much. I don't know, Mr. Sieper, if you have any comments.
I think I would like to propose some form of event or meeting where we bring together you with the voices in Europe that advocate for women's rights, that advocate for transition in Afghanistan. Because you said something very important. We have to do some action. And the problem is, as a parliamentarians, I was just yesterday in my comment section, a guy attacked me again for that. He said, you never take action. And I'm thinking, we're parliamentarians. Parlare is speaking. We can only offer words in many situations. That's our weapon. That's our action, to speak. And I think what we can do here is we can bring forward the idea. Because the Taliban only won again because the idea of the Taliban never went away, and the idea of a democratic Afghanistan didn't take root enough in the Afghan society in the time that we tried to build it. And ideas are the most powerful thing. And in the same way as the idea of the Taliban was so powerful through all these years, the idea of free women is something that the Taliban can never destroy, as long as we promote it. And I think that's why if we want to do something, and I'm looking now at the Secretariat for the rules of procedure. I don't know how exactly a delegation can organize an event or something like that, but I think we will find a way, as always, if it's just us colleagues. We should build a stage for you. I think that's the best thing that we can do. Thank you.
Thank you for this suggestion. I think that there are many ways in which we can think how we can organize this. One of the things that I wanted to remark is that there was a lot of call from all the speakers to support civil society within the country. I think that looking at the structure or the architecture of the current package of the European Union is very much geared not only to emergency humanitarian aid, but to reinforcing civil society, particularly women-led organization, also youth, also journalists. So I think it's very much in that direction. Personally, as a chair of this delegation, I would always want to see a bit more money, and also not only to see the European Union budgets being involved, but also member states with their own contributions also contributing to these goals. We know that the aid has been cut in most member states because of also the perma-crisis that we're seeing in the world. So there is some room for improvement there. Maybe for the colleagues, something that I would like to bring to you is that, well, we're hearing a lot about disengagement with the Taliban, particularly on migration. Mrs. Koufi was talking about that. There have been also communications from the European Commission, from Commissioner Brunner, that it's necessary to engage with the Taliban on the issue of returns. My personal opinion about that is known. I will limit here to my role as chair of the delegation. I think that's something that we should keep up, engaging with the European Commission and ensuring that the engagement is according to the principles which have been repeated here by different speakers, and not only limiting it to one of the subjects at hand, but more subjects. So maybe we can discuss with written procedure, maybe a joint letter or something along those lines. I would like to engage with you on that. And then on an event, we will have to see what's possible. But I also agree that it's good to have these meetings, but it's better when they lead to concrete action. So I hope that we can count on your support.
One more thing, maybe you could ask.
Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for the concrete recommendations, the chair, and also Lucas. In terms of the European Union, yes, European Union is present in Afghanistan. It's engaging with civil society and women groups, also in some Taliban meetings as well, which often is criticized. I think one of the things European Union should do is keep a balance of its engagement between Taliban and non-Taliban community. Probably we should ask them how many times they have actually engaged with non-Taliban groups. And a general suggestion to everybody is, as you rightly said, Mr. Pargri, is we should not expect the people in Afghanistan to choose the same path that we in the West prescribe for them. People have the right to choose whatever means of coping, resisting with the current crisis. And they should not be marginalized on that basis. We are often facing a situation where we are being labeled as, oh, she's or he is more extreme. We need to work with moderate. I mean, you will only feel the pain if you're suffering from it. We're suffering from a pain. Meanwhile, we are very constructive on our engagement. So maybe in your letter that you are issuing, first is that all the 4 accountability mechanisms, investigative mechanism, the ICC case, the ICG case, the gender apartheid codification, but also in terms of humanitarian aid in Afghanistan and their engagement, that you send a letter on deportation, etc., tell them to engage with others, with all the sides, engage meaningfully, give them the space. Thank you.
Thank you. We have noted it. I think that we are approaching the end of the meeting. I would like to thank you again for your also final contributions and ideas, and again to the speakers also for your contributions. We take them along, and we wish you a very productive stay in Brussels in all of your meetings, and I hope that we will cross paths again at some time in the future. Thank you so much. If there's no other business, any other business for today? No? Then we can address the last point of the meeting, which is the date and time of the next meeting. We would like to hold the next Delegation for Afghanistan meeting on the 17th of September 2026, and that will be from 9:30 to 11:30 in Strasbourg. The Secretariat will send a save the date to all members of the delegation as soon as possible. And lastly, I would like to thank the interpreters, also the improvised interpreters, for their contribution today. Thank you so much, and see you at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you.
It was really interesting.
I know in the middle of all the crises around the world, you know, bring focus to
We should be able to have our...
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General.
Oh, thank you.